The staff at the Harrington Royal Hotel were told never to look the guests in the eye, especially not the poor housekeeping staff like Eleanor Vance. She was invisible, underpaid, and constantly mocked by the hotel's cruel heiress, Beatrice. But the hierarchy of power was about to shatter when a mysterious Japanese billionaire arrived with a deal worth billions. The entire management team froze in terror. The translator was missing, the deal was crumbling, and the billionaire was furious. That was until Eleanor, the invisible maid, stepped forward and spoke a single, perfect sentence that changed everything. This is the story of how the forgotten waitress owned the room. The Harrington Royal Hotel stood in the center of the city like a monument to excess. It was a place where the chandeliers were dusted with ostrich feathers, and the lobby smelled of white tea and old money. For the guests, it was paradise. For Eleanor Vance, it was a high-pressure cage. Eleanor was 24, with tired eyes that she tried to hide behind a forced smile. She wore the standard-issue beige uniform that was intentionally designed to be unflattering, blending the staff into the cream-colored walls. Her name tag was slightly crooked, a detail that Beatrice Harrington, the hotel's general manager, had already pointed out 3 times that morning. Beatrice was a woman who wore her authority like a weapon. As the granddaughter of the hotel's founder, she had never scrubbed a floor or carried a tray in her life. She was tall, blonde, and possessed a voice that could slice through the ambient noise of the lobby like a glass shard. "Vance!" Beatrice's voice rang out across the polished marble floor. Eleanor froze, balancing a heavy tray of silver coffee pots. She took a breath, centered herself, and turned around. "Yes, Miss Harrington?" Beatrice marched over, her heels clicking a sharp, aggressive rhythm. She stopped inches from Eleanor's face, wrinkling her nose as if she smelled something rotting. "Your collar," Beatrice hissed, reaching out and flicking the fabric of Eleanor's uniform. "It's stiff. It looks cheap. Did you not use the fabric softener I recommended?" I couldn't afford it this week, Miss Harrington," Eleanor admitted quietly, her cheeks flushing. "But I ironed it twice." Beatrice laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Afford it?" "It's $5, Vance. If you spent less time daydreaming and more time working double shifts, maybe you wouldn't be such an embarrassment to my floor." She turned to the other staff members hovering nearby, Sarah, the head receptionist, and Thomas, the concierge. "Look at her. This is why we don't let housekeeping serve the VIPs. She brings the property value down just by standing there." Sarah giggled, covering her mouth. Thomas looked away, sympathetic but too afraid of losing his job to intervene. Eleanor gripped the tray tighter, her knuckles turning white. She needed this job. Her father's medical bills were piling up on the kitchen counter of her tiny studio apartment, unopened and terrifying. She swallowed her pride, just as she did every single day. "I apologize, Miss Harrington. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," Beatrice snapped, "because today isn't just any day. We have the most important guest in the history of the Harrington Royal arriving in 3 hours. If you so much as breathe loudly near him, I will fire you before you can blink. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mum." "Good. Now, get that coffee to the boardroom and take the back stairs. I don't want the guests seeing you." Eleanor hurried away, the heavy tray trembling in her hands. She pushed through the swinging doors into the service corridor, the air changing from the cool, floral scent of the lobby to the smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Once she was safe in the service elevator, Eleanor leaned her head against the cold metal wall and closed her eyes. She reached into her apron pocket and touched the worn, dog-eared paperback book she kept hidden there. It wasn't a romance novel or a magazine. It was an advanced textbook, business Japanese and corporate etiquette. No one at the hotel knew about Eleanor's past. They didn't know that 3 years ago she had been a top scholarship student at the university, majoring in East Asian linguistics. They didn't know she had spent a summer in Kyoto, or that she had a natural ear for pitch and tone that her professors called prodigious. They only knew that her father had a stroke. The scholarship money wasn't enough to cover the care, and she had dropped out to work 2 jobs. To Beatrice, Eleanor was just Vance, the girl who couldn't afford fabric softener. But at night, when her father was asleep and her feet throbbed from a 12-hour shift, Eleanor studied. She watched Japanese news channels, practiced her kanji, and whispered phrases into the darkness. It was her escape. It was the only part of her brain that felt alive. The elevator dinged at the top floor. Eleanor straightened her spine. She had to survive today. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere was shifting from routine luxury to frantic panic. Beatrice was barking orders at a team of florists. "No, no! Lilies are for funerals!" Beatrice screamed, grabbing a vase of white lilies and shoving them into Sarah's chest. "He is a billionaire, not a corpse. Get orchids. Purple ones. The expensive ones." Sarah scrambled away, looking terrified. "Thomas!" Beatrice yelled. "Is the red carpet vacuumed? I see a speck of dust from here. Fix it!" Beatrice was sweating through her heavy makeup. The rumor mill had been churning for weeks. The guest was Mr. Kenji Sato, the CEO of Sato Heavy Industries. He wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful enough to buy the entire city block without checking his bank balance. He was looking to acquire a Western hotel chain to expand his empire, and the Harrington Royal was top of the list. If the deal went through, Beatrice would be promoted to regional director. If it failed, her grandfather had threatened to cut her out of the will. "Ms. Harrington," Thomas said, holding a clipboard. "We have a problem." "I don't have time for problems, Thomas. I need solutions." "It's the translator," Thomas said, his voice shaking. "The agency just called. Their specialist is stuck at the airport. His flight was grounded in Chicago due to a storm. He won't be here until tomorrow." Beatrice stopped dead. She turned slowly to face Thomas. "Tomorrow? Mr. Sato arrives in 40 minutes. They offered a phone translator," Thomas suggested weakly. "A phone translator?" Beatrice shrieked. "This is a billion-dollar merger. I cannot hold a phone up to Kenji Sato's face. Do we have anyone else? Does anyone here speak Japanese?" She looked around the lobby. The bellboys shook their heads. The concierge looked at his shoes. Sarah, who had returned with the orchids, just shrugged. "I took French in high school," Sarah offered. "Useless. All of you. Useless." Beatrice paced the floor, her heels clicking faster. "Fine, it's fine. I have Google Translate on my iPad. And I know the cultural basics. Bow low, don't shake hands, offer tea. We can do this. I am a Harrington. I can handle one Japanese businessman." She adjusted her blazer, checking her reflection in the glass door. "Get everyone in line," Beatrice commanded. "The limousine is 2 minutes out. And where is Vance? Tell her to stay in the kitchen. If I see her drab face while Mr. Sato is here, heads will roll." In the kitchen, Eleanor was scrubbing a massive soup pot. She could hear the commotion outside, the vibrating tension that ran through the walls. She wiped her hands on her apron and sighed. She knew who Kenji Sato was. She had read his biography in Japanese for practice 2 months ago. He was a traditionalist, a man of honor and strict protocol. And she knew, with a sinking feeling in her gut, that Beatrice Harrington was about to walk into a disaster. The limousine was sleek, black, and longer than Eleanor's entire apartment. It pulled up to the curb of the Harrington Royal with a silent grace, flanked by 2 black SUVs. Beatrice stood at the front of the receiving line, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She had forced a smile onto her face that looked painful. Behind her, the staff stood rigid, terrified of making a mistake. The chauffeur opened the back door. First, a rush of cool air escaped. Then, a polished black shoe stepped onto the red carpet. Kenji Sato emerged. He was an older man, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair swept back impeccably. He wore a suit that likely cost more than the hotel's annual maintenance budget. His face was unreadable, a mask of calm authority. Behind him, 3 younger men in dark suits followed, his assistants and legal team. Beatrice stepped forward. She had practiced her bow in the mirror for 10 minutes. She bent at the waist, perhaps a little too deeply, looking like she was inspecting the pavement. "Welcome, Mr. Sato," Beatrice boomed in English, her voice too loud for the intimate setting. "We are so honored to have you at the Harrington Royal." Mr. Sato looked at her. He didn't smile. He turned to his lead assistant, a sharp-eyed man named Hiro. Hiro whispered something in Japanese to Mr. Sato. Mr. Sato frowned slightly. "Mr. Sato speaks very little English," Hiro said, his accent heavy but understandable. He was expecting Mr. Reynolds, the translator. "Ah, yes," Beatrice said, her smile faltering. "Mr. Reynolds had a travel delay. But fear not. I am personally overseeing your stay." She pulled out her iPad. "Technology connects us all, yes?" She tapped the translation app and spoke into it. "We have prepared the presidential suite for you." A robotic voice blared out of the iPad in Japanese. Mr. Sato flinched at the mechanical noise. He looked insulted. In his world, business was personal. Relying on a machine for a first introduction was a sign of laziness and disrespect. He said something sharp to Hiro. "Mr. Sato wishes to go to his room immediately," Hiro translated, looking stressed. "He is tired." "Of course. Right this way." Beatrice gestured grandly. As the group moved into the lobby, the disaster truly began. Beatrice had ordered a traditional welcome tea to be set up in the center of the lobby. It was a disaster of cultural ignorance. There were tea bags in a glass pot, boiling water, and a plate of chocolate chip cookies. Mr. Sato stopped and looked at the table. He picked up a tea bag packet, inspecting it with 2 fingers as if it were a dirty tissue. "Earl Grey," he muttered in English, the only words he had spoken so far. "Yes, the best," Beatrice chirped. Mr. Sato dropped the tea bag. He turned to Hiro and spoke rapidly, his voice low but filled with steel. Hiro turned to Beatrice. "Mr. Sato requested Gyokuro tea, green tea, specifically prepared at 60 degrees Celsius. This is black tea, boiling hot." "Tea is tea," Beatrice muttered under her breath, her smile twitching. Then louder, "We can fix that. Thomas, get green tea." Thomas ran to the bar, but everyone knew the hotel only stocked generic green tea bags, nothing close to the high-grade shade-grown tea the billionaire expected. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Mr. Sato was not just a businessman. He was a man who tested the attention to detail of his potential partners. If they couldn't get a cup of tea right, how could they manage his billion-dollar assets? "This place," Mr. Sato said in Japanese to his assistants, "is a circus. The woman is loud and lacks grace. Prepare the car. We leave in 1 hour if the meeting is not satisfactory." Beatrice didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. She was losing him. Panic clawed at her throat. "Please let me show you to the suite," Beatrice insisted. "It has a view of the park." They moved toward the elevators. The procession was awkward. Beatrice kept trying to use the iPad, but the internet connection in the elevator was spotty, causing the robotic voice to stutter and freeze. Suddenly, the elevator lurched. It wasn't a malfunction, just a clumsy stop. But Mr. Sato stumbled slightly. One of his assistants dropped a folder. Papers scattered across the floor of the elevator. "Oh, let me help!" Beatrice crouched down, her skirt riding up inappropriately. She grabbed the papers, shoving them back into the folder in a disorganized mess. Mr. Sato closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He looked like a man counting to 10 to avoid screaming. The doors opened on the penthouse floor. Beatrice led them down the hall, sweating profusely. "Here we are." She swiped the keycard. The door clicked open. The suite was magnificent, but Beatrice had made another error. She had filled the room with the purple orchids she demanded earlier. Mr. Sato stopped at the threshold. His face went pale. He covered his nose and mouth with a handkerchief. "No," Hiro said, stepping in front of Mr. Sato. "No flowers." "What?" Beatrice gasped. "These are imported orchids. They cost $2,000. Mr. Sato has severe asthma triggered by heavy pollen," Hiro said, his voice rising in panic. "He specified this in the rider, a hypoallergenic room." Beatrice froze. She hadn't read the rider. She had been too busy yelling at the staff about their uniforms. Mr. Sato began to cough, a dry, hacking sound. He retreated into the hallway, his face turning red. He looked at Beatrice with pure, unadulterated fury. "Incompetence!" Mr. Sato rasped in Japanese. "Absolute incompetence! I don't understand!" Beatrice cried out, looking around wildly. "Someone help me! Why is he coughing?" The staff in the hallway, housekeeping, room service, pressed themselves against the walls, terrified. No one moved. No one knew what to do. Beatrice was drowning. Her inheritance, her promotion, her reputation. It was all dissolving because of flowers and tea. "Get these flowers out!" she screamed at a random maid. "Throw them off the balcony. I don't care." But it was too late. Mr. Sato was already turning back toward the elevator, his assistants flanking him, like bodyguards protecting a dignitary from an assassination attempt. "We are leaving," Hiro announced. "We will find another hotel." "No!" Beatrice grabbed Hiro's arm, a massive breach of protocol. "You can't leave the contract." Hiro pulled his arm away sharply. "Do not touch me." The elevator doors opened, but it wasn't empty. Standing inside was Eleanor Vance. She was holding a tray of fresh towels, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. The red-faced billionaire, the panicked assistants, and her boss looking like she was about to have a stroke. Eleanor stepped out, trying to make herself small, to disappear into the wall as she always did. Mr. Sato was coughing harder now, leaning against the wall, wheezing. He looked at his assistant and gasped out a request in Japanese, his voice strained and desperate. He needed his inhaler, but he had left it in the car, and the pollen in the hallway was overwhelming him. "Maizu, kudasai. Water, please." He wheezed, but he used a specific word, implying warm water to soothe the throat, not ice water which would shock his lungs. "He wants water," Beatrice yelled. "Thomas, get ice water, now!" Thomas sprinted off. Eleanor froze. She knew that ice water would make the coughing spasm worse for an asthmatic reaction like this. She saw Mr. Sato clutching his chest. Beatrice was flapping her hands. "It's okay. Ice water is coming." Eleanor looked at Beatrice. Then she looked at the suffering old man. The hierarchy of the hotel screamed at her to stay silent. "Don't look at the guests. Don't speak. You are nobody." But Eleanor couldn't watch a man suffer. She dropped her towel tray. The soft thud echoed in the silent hallway. She stepped forward, bypassing Beatrice, bypassing the assistants. She stopped 3 feet from Mr. Sato and bowed. Not the deep, stiff bow Beatrice had performed, but a perfect, respectful 30-degree bow, keeping her back straight and her eyes lowered. "Sato-sama," Eleanor spoke. Her voice was soft, but her Japanese was crystal clear, with the refined accent of someone who had studied the Kyoto dialect. "Korimizu wa nodo ni warui desu. Nurumayu o omochi shimashu ka?" Ice water is bad for the throat. Shall I bring lukewarm water? The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Beatrice's jaw dropped. Mr. Sato stopped wheezing for a second, his eyes widening in shock. He looked at the girl in the cheap, ill-fitting beige uniform, the girl with the crooked name tag. He straightened up, looking at her with intense curiosity. He nodded slowly. "Ah, Tanomu. Ah, yes, please," he whispered. Eleanor turned to Beatrice, whose face had gone from red to a ghostly white. "Miss Harrington," Eleanor said in English, her voice steady for the first time in years. "He needs lukewarm water to soothe his throat. Ice will seize his lungs, and he needs us to close the door to the suite immediately to stop the pollen flow." Beatrice was paralyzed. She blinked, unable to process that Vance had just taken command. "Did you hear me?" Eleanor said, slightly sharper this time. Beatrice flinched. Yes, do it." Eleanor moved. The invisible girl was invisible no more, and the storm had just broken. The hallway on the penthouse floor was silent, save for the rhythmic, grateful sips of Kenji Sato drinking warm water. Eleanor stood with her hands clasped in front of her, her head slightly bowed, waiting for him to finish. She did not fidget. She did not look at Beatrice, who was vibrating with a mix of relief and murderous rage a few feet away. Mr. Sato lowered the glass. The wheezing had stopped. His color was returning, the angry flush of the allergic reaction fading into a pale, exhausted calm. He handed the glass back to Eleanor, not to his assistant. It was a small gesture, but in the rigid hierarchy of Japanese business etiquette, it was a thunderclap. "Arigato," he said, his voice gravelly but sincere. "You saved me from a very uncomfortable night." "It was my honor, Sato-sama," Eleanor replied fluently. "I apologize deeply for the discomfort you experienced. The hotel staff wishes only for your health and happiness. We have a suite on the 7th floor, the Sapphire Room. It has hardwood floors, no carpets, and no flowers. It is kept specifically for guests with sensitivities. Would you allow us to move you there?" Mr. Sato looked at Hiro, his assistant. Hiro looked at Eleanor, impressed. "That would be acceptable," Hiro said in English, glancing at Beatrice. "We will move." Beatrice stepped forward, sensing she was being cut out of the conversation. "What? What did he say? Vance, tell me." "He accepts the move to the Sapphire Room," Eleanor said, keeping her face neutral. "It's hypoallergenic." "I know that," Beatrice snapped, though she clearly hadn't thought of it. "I was just about to suggest it. Go clean something. I'll take it from here." Beatrice reached out to guide Mr. Sato, flashing her plastic smile again. "Mr. Sato, right this way." Mr. Sato did not move. He looked at Beatrice, then back at Eleanor. He spoke to Eleanor, ignoring the general manager entirely. "You will accompany us," he said. "I do not trust her to understand my needs." Eleanor hesitated. She glanced at Beatrice. Beatrice's eyes were wide, signaling a silent threat. "Say no or you're fired." Eleanor started, switching to English. "Miss Harrington is very capable, sir. I have duties in the laundry." Mr. Sato raised a hand. "If you do not come, I go to the 4 Seasons." The threat hung in the air. Beatrice heard the words, 4 Seasons, and froze. She knew that if Sato walked, her grandfather would not just fire her, he would disown her. Beatrice swallowed her pride, though it looked like she was swallowing broken glass. "Vance," she said through gritted teeth. "Assist Mr. Sato. Just for now." Eleanor nodded. She led the group to the service elevator, which was faster than the main one, and guided them down to the 7th floor. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible in her clunky work shoes. She opened the door to the Sapphire Room, checked the thermostat, and adjusted the blinds to block the afternoon sun that was hitting the armchair. "Is the temperature to your liking?" she asked Mr. Sato in Japanese. "Perfect," he sighed, sitting down in the leather chair. He looked at her closely for the first time. Where did a maid at the Harrington Royal learn to speak the dialect of Kyoto? Eleanor smiled faintly. "I studied linguistics at the university, sir, and I spent a summer in Arashiyama. I fell in love with the culture." "Linguistics," Sato mused, "and now you carry towels." "Life," Eleanor said simply, "is full of unexpected turns." Sato nodded, a glint of respect in his eyes. "Indeed. You may go, but stay close." Eleanor bowed and backed out of the room. As the door clicked shut, the illusion of calm shattered. Beatrice was waiting in the hallway. She didn't look like a boss anymore. She looked like a predator who had been cornered. She grabbed Eleanor's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the fabric of the uniform. "Who do you think you are?" Beatrice hissed, her face inches from Eleanor's. "I was doing my job, Miss Harrington," Eleanor said, wincing but not pulling away. "He was choking. You humiliated me." Beatrice's voice rose to a strangled whisper. "You made me look incompetent in front of a billionaire. Speaking that language. You probably told him I'm an idiot, didn't you?" "I told him we wanted him to be comfortable," Eleanor said firmly. "I saved the account, Beatrice." It was the first time she had used the manager's first name. Beatrice recoiled as if slapped. "You saved nothing," Beatrice spat. "You are a prop, a temporary fix. Tomorrow, the real translator arrives, and you will go back to the basement where you belong. If you try to upstage me again, I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will blacklist you so hard, you won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets at a gas station. Do you understand me?" Eleanor felt the old fear rising, the worry about her father's bills, the fragility of her life. But something had changed. She had seen the respect in Mr. Sato's eyes. She realized she had value. "I understand," Eleanor said quietly. "Good. Now get out of my sight, and take off that apron. You smell like bleach." Beatrice stormed off toward the elevators, pulling out her phone to call her grandfather and spin a lie about how she had deftly handled a medical emergency. Eleanor stood alone in the hallway. Her arm throbbed where Beatrice had grabbed her. She walked to the stairwell, her legs shaking. She sat down on the cold concrete steps and put her head in her hands. She should have been terrified. But for the first time in 3 years, Eleanor Vance didn't feel invisible. She felt dangerous. By 7:00 p.m., the Harrington Royal was buzzing with nervous energy. The word had spread through the staff underground network, the kitchen porters, the maids, the valets, that Eleanor, the quiet girl from housekeeping, had stared down the dragon lady, Beatrice, and charmed the billionaire. In the basement laundry room, Eleanor was folding sheets. Beatrice had banished her there immediately after the incident, assigning her a double shift of ironing tablecloths as punishment. The heat in the room was stifling, the steam pressing against Eleanor's face. Upstairs, in the private dining room of the Gilded Fork, the hotel's Michelin-starred restaurant, a disaster was brewing. The table was set with crystal and silver. Beatrice sat at the head, wearing a red designer dress that screamed for attention. On her right sat her grandfather, Arthur Harrington, a frail but imposing man in a wheelchair who had come down specifically to seal this deal. On her left was the empty chair, meant for the translator, Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds was still in Chicago. The storm had worsened. Across the table sat Kenji Sato and Hiro. Mr. Sato looked at his watch. He looked at the empty chair. Then he looked at Beatrice. "Where is she?" Sato asked in English. Beatrice smiled, pouring wine. "Mr. Reynolds is delayed, sadly. But don't worry, I have prepared a presentation with visual aids, and No, Sato cut her off. The girl. The one with the... He gestured vaguely to his head. The brain. Beatrice's smile froze. Oh, you mean the maid? Vance? Oh, Mr. Sato. She is not qualified for a dinner of this magnitude. She is uneducated. She went home for the night. Arthur Harrington looked at his granddaughter. Beatrice, what is he asking for? He wants the maid to translate, grandfather. It's ridiculous. We can manage with English. Mr. Sato speaks enough. Don't you, Kenji? Beatrice tried to sound charmingly informal. Mr. Sato placed his napkin on the table. He did not look amused. He spoke rapidly to Hiro. Hiro stood up. Mr. Sato wishes to inform you that he does not conduct business in broken English. He requires a translator he trusts. He trusts the young woman from this afternoon. If she is not here in 10 minutes, we will dine in our room, and we will check out tomorrow morning. Arthur Harrington turned his wheelchair toward Beatrice. His eyes, usually cloudy with age, were sharp as daggers. Beatrice, get the girl. But grandfather, she's just... Get her! Arthur roared, slamming his fist on the table. I don't care if she's the janitor. If Sato wants her, you fetch her. Now! Beatrice scrambled out of her chair, her face burning with humiliation. She ran out of the dining room, her heels clacking frantically on the marble. Down in the laundry room, Eleanor was sweating through her uniform. The door banged open. Beatrice stood there, breathless, her hair slightly disheveled. You? Beatrice gasped. Upstairs. Now. Eleanor didn't look up from the sheet she was ironing. I'm on my shift, Miss Harrington. You told me if I left this room, I was fired. Forget what I said, Beatrice shrieked. Sato is asking for you. He won't eat until you're there. Eleanor paused. She set the iron down. She turned slowly. He wants me to translate. Yes. God, don't look so smug. It's just dinner. But you can't go up there looking like that. Beatrice gestured at Eleanor's sweat-stained beige uniform. You look like a wet dog. I don't have any other clothes here, Eleanor said. Beatrice groaned. She grabbed Eleanor's wrist. Come with me. They ran to the lost and found closet near the concierge desk. It was a treasure trove of items left behind by wealthy guests, scarves, sunglasses, and clothes. Beatrice rummaged through a rack of unclaimed dry cleaning. Too big, too sparkly, too slutty, Beatrice muttered, tossing hangers aside. Finally, she pulled out a simple, elegant navy blue cocktail dress. It had been left by a businesswoman 3 months ago. Put this on and fix your hair. You have 3 minutes. Eleanor stepped behind a screen. She shed the heavy uniform. The silk of the dress felt cool against her skin. It fit surprisingly well, hugging her waist and falling just below her knees. She let her hair down from its tight bun, the brown waves framing her face. She pinched her cheeks to bring some color back. When she stepped out, Beatrice blinked. For a second, the manager didn't see a maid. She saw a young woman who looked like she belonged in the lobby, not the basement. It'll do, Beatrice sneered, masking her jealousy. Don't speak unless spoken to. Translate exactly what I say. Don't add anything. Don't improvise. You are a mouthpiece, Vance. Nothing more. They entered the dining room. As Eleanor walked in, Mr. Sato stood up. Arthur Harrington's eyebrows shot up. He hadn't expected the maid to look like this. Konbanwa, Sato-sama, Eleanor said, bowing deeply. I apologize for the delay. Sit, Sato said, gesturing to the empty chair on his right, the seat of honor, usually reserved for the highest-ranking counterpart. Eleanor sat. Beatrice had to sit across from them, next to her grandfather, looking like a child at the adults' table. The dinner began. The food was exquisite, but no one tasted it. The conversation turned immediately to business. Tell Mr. Sato, Arthur Harrington rasped, that we are prepared to offer him a 51% stake in the hotel. But the Harrington family retains management control for 5 years, Eleanor translated. Sato listened, then laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He spoke back, fast and technical. Eleanor turned to Arthur. Mr. Sato says that 51% is a majority on paper, but without operational control it is a donation, not an acquisition. He counters with 60%, and he wants the ability to replace senior management within 6 months if performance targets are not met. Beatrice turned pale. Replace senior management? That means me. Tell him no, Beatrice shouted. Tell him that's insulting. The Harrington brand is the management. Eleanor looked at Beatrice, then at Sato. She knew that translating Beatrice's aggression would end the meeting. Translate it, Beatrice demanded. Eleanor took a breath. She turned to Sato. The Harrington family is very proud of their legacy. They are concerned that a sudden change in management might disturb the loyal clientele. However, they are open to discussing performance metrics. Sato looked at her. He knew she had softened the blow. He appreciated the diplomacy. Tell them I will guarantee the position of the current general manager for 1 year. But I want a clause that allows for an independent audit of the staff satisfaction and efficiency. Eleanor translated this back to English. An audit? Beatrice scoffed. We don't need an audit. My staff loves me. Eleanor kept her face stone still. If only you knew, she thought. The negotiation dragged on for 2 hours. The terms were complex. Stock options, land rights, union contracts. Beatrice was lost half the time, relying on Eleanor to explain the nuances of what Sato was asking. Arthur Harrington, however, was watching Eleanor closely. He saw how she navigated the cultural landmines, how she knew when to pause, when to pour more sake, when to deflect a rude comment from Beatrice and turn it into a constructive point. By the time dessert arrived, the deal was tentatively structured. It was a massive win for the hotel. Mr. Sato raised his glass. To a prosperous future, he said in English. To the future, Arthur replied. Beatrice raised her glass high, grinning. We did it. I knew I could close this. Mr. Sato didn't look at her. He looked at Eleanor. You have a good mind for business, he said in Japanese. You understand what is not said. That is a rare skill. Why are you cleaning toilets? Eleanor felt the eyes of the room on her. I had to leave school, sir. Family obligations. A waste, Sato grunted. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a plain black business card. He slid it across the white tablecloth. It stopped right in front of Eleanor. If you ever want to stop folding sheets and start building empires, call this number. My Tokyo office is always looking for talent. The room went silent. Beatrice stared at the card like it was a bomb. Arthur Harrington looked from the card to Eleanor, a calculating look entering his old eyes. Eleanor touched the card. It was heavy, textured cardstock. Thank you, sir. I am honored. Don't get too excited, Beatrice snapped, her voice shrill in the quiet room. She can't move to Tokyo. She can barely afford rent here. And besides, she has a shift tomorrow at 6 a.m. Don't you, Vance? Eleanor looked at Beatrice. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, hard realization. Beatrice was small. Beatrice was terrified. And for the first time, Eleanor held the cards. Actually, Miss Harrington, Eleanor said, her voice smooth and carrying the same steel she had heard in Mr. Sato's voice. I think I might be calling in sick tomorrow. Beatrice gasped. Mr. Sato chuckled. Arthur Harrington sat back in his wheelchair and, for the first time in years, smiled. But the night wasn't over. As they stood to leave, Beatrice leaned in close to Eleanor, her whisper venomous. "You think you won?" Beatrice hissed. "You're just a novelty. He'll leave tomorrow, and I'll still be your boss. And I will make you pay for every single second of this." Eleanor didn't flinch. "We'll see." But as Eleanor walked out of the restaurant, she didn't notice the man watching her from the bar shadows, a private investigator Beatrice had hired weeks ago to dig up dirt on staff members to deny them raises. He was typing a message on his phone. Target, Eleanor Vance. Found something interesting about her father's debt. Sending details now. The war for the Harrington Royal had just begun, and Eleanor was about to find out that Beatrice didn't fight fair. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Harrington Royal, turning the building into a blinding pillar of light. But inside the basement service corridors, the air was cold and stagnant. Eleanor Vance had not slept. The adrenaline of the dinner had faded, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. She had the business card of Kenji Sato in her pocket, burning a hole through the fabric. It was a ticket out. It was hope. But hope, Eleanor knew, was a dangerous thing in a place like this. At 8:00 a.m., just as Eleanor was clocking in, the loudspeaker crackled. "Eleanor Vance, report to the general manager's office immediately." The other maids exchanged looks. Some were hopeful, whispering that she was getting a promotion. Others, the older ones who knew how the Harrington machinery worked, looked at her with pity. Eleanor smoothed her beige uniform. The Cinderella dress from last night was returned to the closet, a memory that felt like a dream, and took the elevator up. Beatrice's office was a shrine to her own ego. The walls were covered in framed magazine covers featuring the hotel, and the desk was an expanse of black glass. Beatrice sat behind it, not looking at a computer, but staring at a manila folder. She didn't look up when Eleanor entered. "Close the door," Beatrice said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Eleanor closed it. "You wanted to see me, Ms. Harrington?" Beatrice finally looked up. Her eyes were rimmed with red, suggesting she hadn't slept either, but her smile was razor-sharp. "I did. I wanted to talk about your future, Eleanor, or rather, the lack of it." Beatrice slid the manila folder across the glass desk. It stopped at the edge. "Open it." Eleanor stepped forward and flipped the folder open. Her breath hitched. It wasn't a disciplinary report. It was a medical file, specifically her father's admission papers to the St. Jude's long-term care facility. "My private investigator is very thorough," Beatrice said, leaning back in her leather chair. "James Vance. Severe stroke. Requires 24-hour assistance. The cost is astronomical. You're barely making the payments, aren't you? In fact, you're 3 weeks behind." Eleanor's hands shook. "This is private information. You have no right." "I have every right," Beatrice interrupted, "because St. Jude's is a subsidiary of the Harrington Medical Group. My grandfather is the chairman of the board. We own the bed your father sleeps in. We own the machines that keep him breathing." The room seemed to tilt. Eleanor gripped the edge of the desk. "What do you want?" Beatrice stood up and walked around the desk. She was wearing heels that made her 4 inches taller than Eleanor. She leaned in, her perfume cloying and sweet. "I want you to disappear," Beatrice whispered. "Mr. Sato was impressed by a parlor trick. He thinks you're special. But if you take that job in Tokyo, or if you speak to him again, I will make a call. I will have your father transferred to a state facility, the kind with understaffed wards and bed sores. He won't survive a month." Tears stung Eleanor's eyes. It was a cruelty so specific, so targeted, it took her breath away. "You would kill an old man just because I translated a dinner?" "I would do anything to protect my legacy," Beatrice hissed. "You made me look like a fool in front of my inheritance. I don't forgive that. Ever? Beatrice held out her hand. Give me the card. Eleanor froze. The card was her future, but her father was her heart. There was no choice. There never was. Slowly, painfully, Eleanor reached into her pocket. She pulled out the black card with the embossed white lettering. Kenji Sato's lifeline. She dropped it into Beatrice's open palm. Beatrice smiled, closing her fingers around it. She walked to the shredder in the corner of the room. Whirr. The card was gone. You're fired, obviously, Beatrice said casually, sitting back down, for theft. I'm accusing you of stealing the dress you wore last night. Don't worry, I won't press charges as long as you leave the building in 10 minutes and never come back. If Mr. Sato asks, I'll tell him you quit to take care of your sick father. It's not even a lie, is it? Eleanor felt hollowed out. She looked at the woman who had everything, wealth, power, status, and saw nothing but a void. You have the hotel, Beatrice, Eleanor said, her voice trembling but clear, but you will never have respect. You can't buy what I have. Get out, Beatrice snapped, turning her chair away. Eleanor walked out of the office, down the hall, and out the service exit. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. She couldn't bear it. She walked out into the harsh sunlight of the city, unemployed, broken, and back to being invisible. But Beatrice had made one miscalculation. She assumed Eleanor's power came from the business card. She didn't realize that Eleanor's power came from her mind and her desperation. 2 days passed. The city was grey, covered in a drizzle of rain. Eleanor sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the wall. The final contract signing between Sato Heavy Industries and the Harrington Royal was scheduled for noon today. Beatrice would win. She would get her promotion, the hotel would get the investment, and the toxic culture would continue. Eleanor looked at her bookshelf. She pulled down a worn copy of a biography, The Silent Tiger, The Life of Kenji Sato. She opened it to page 142. I do not find clarity in boardrooms, Sato once told a reporter. I find it on the chessboard. Every city I visit, I find a public park, and I play. It is the only place where money does not matter. Only the move matters. Eleanor checked the time. 7:06 a.m. She knew Sato was a creature of habit. If he was stressed about the merger, and he would be, given his reservations about Beatrice, he would be looking for clarity. Eleanor grabbed her coat. She grabbed a small, battered notebook from her nightstand, the notebook where she had kept track of every shift, every stolen tip, every safety violation Beatrice had ignored to save money. She ran to the subway. Washington Square Park was misty and quiet. The pigeons huddled under the benches. Near the southwest corner, under the shelter of an old oak tree, were the stone chess tables. Most were empty, but at the furthest table, a man sat alone. He was wearing a nondescript trench coat and a flat cap, pulled low. He was playing against himself, moving white, then turning the board to move black. It was him. Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. If Beatrice saw her, her father was doomed. But if she didn't do this, she was doomed anyway. She walked up to the table. She didn't bow. She didn't speak Japanese. She simply stood opposite him. Sato didn't look up. He was staring at a complex, mid-game position. White is in trouble, Eleanor said softly. The knight is bait. If you take it, black forces a mate in 4 moves. Sato froze. His hand hovered over the knight. He traced the lines in his head. 1, 2, 3, 4. She was right. It was a trap. He looked up slowly. Under the brim of the cap, his sharp eyes widened. The waitress, he said. Eleanor, she corrected. She sat down on the wet stone bench opposite him. Beatrice told me you stole a dress and fled the city, Sato said, his voice neutral. She said you were ashamed. Beatrice lies, Eleanor said. White moves to e5. It blocks the bishop. Sato moved the pawn to e5. Why are you here? If you are a thief, you are bold. I am not a thief, Mr. Sato. I am a victim of leverage. Beatrice threatened to evict my father from his care facility if I spoke to you. Sato's eyes narrowed. The air between them grew heavy. He placed his hands on the table. That is a serious accusation. I don't expect you to believe me without proof, Eleanor said. She pulled the battered notebook from her pocket and placed it on the chessboard, right next to the Black King. This isn't a medical record, she said. This is an operational log. For 3 years I have tracked the housekeeping shifts. Beatrice charges the hotel corporate account for 5 cleaners per floor, but she only hires 3. She pockets the difference. She buys low-grade cleaning chemicals and bills for premium eco-friendly ones. The allergy-free pillows you requested. They are regular pillows with new cases. She simply sprays them with Febreze. Sato picked up the notebook. He flipped through the pages. The handwriting was meticulous. Dates, times, receipts taped to pages. It was an audit. A bottom-up audit from the person who saw the dirtiest corners of the empire. Why give me this? Sato asked. Why not the police? The police take months, Eleanor said. The contract signing is in 5 hours. Once you sign, she uses your money to cover the holes in the budget. She wins, and she keeps hurting people. Sato closed the notebook. He looked at the chessboard. He moved his queen, capturing a pawn. An aggressive, decisive move. You play chess? He asked. My father taught me before he got sick, Eleanor said. He told me that the most dangerous piece on the board is the one your opponent forgets about. Sato smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, one that reached his eyes. Beatrice forgot the pawn, Sato said. He stood up, tucking the notebook into his trench coat. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Hero, bring the car to the south entrance of the park, and bring a fresh suit. Women's size. Small. He looked at Eleanor. You will not be cleaning today, Eleanor-san. Today, you are my consultant. I can't, Eleanor panicked. My father. I will have my private medical team transfer your father to the Columbia Presbyterian VIP wing within the hour, Sato said calmly. Beatrice's leverage is gone. The Harrington Group does not own me. He held out his hand. Come, we have a game to finish, and I believe it is your move. Eleanor looked at his hand. Then she looked at the chessboard. She reached out and knocked over the Black King. I resign this game, she said, standing up. I'd rather win the real one. Sato laughed. Good answer. The conference room at the Harrington Royal was filled with flowers, orchids again, because Beatrice never learned. Arthur Harrington sat at the head of the table, looking impatient. Beatrice was pacing, checking her reflection in the window. He's late, Beatrice complained. It's 12:15. This is disrespectful. Sit down, Beatrice, Arthur snapped. He is bringing billions. He can be late. At 12:20, the double doors swung open. Hiro walked in first, holding the door. Then Kenji Sato entered, looking immaculate in a charcoal suit. So sorry for the delay, Sato said in English. I picked up a new advisor to help with the language barrier. Beatrice rolled her eyes. Oh, finally. Did the agency send someone competent this time? Sato stepped aside. Eleanor walked in. She was wearing a sharp, tailored black suit that Hiro had procured. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, professional bun. She carried a leather portfolio and her battered notebook. The silence in the room was absolute. Beatrice stopped mid-step. Her face went slack, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Vance?" she whispered. Eleanor walked to the chair at Sato's right hand. She didn't look at Beatrice. She looked at Arthur Harrington. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harrington," Eleanor said, her voice projecting with a confidence that filled the room. "Mr. Sato is ready to begin. But first, there are a few amendments to the contract regarding personnel management." Beatrice lunged forward. "You can't be here. Security. Grandfather, get her out. She's a thief." "Sit down, Beatrice," Arthur roared, confused but sensing the shift in power. He looked at Sato. "Mr. Sato, what is the meaning of this?" Sato sat down slowly. He placed the battered notebook on the table. "Eleanor-san speaks for me," Sato said in Japanese, "and she speaks for the hotel. Listen closely." Eleanor opened the notebook. She looked at Beatrice, whose face was now a mask of pure terror. "Shall we begin with the laundry budget, Miss Harrington?" Eleanor asked. "Or should we start with the invoices for the ghost employees?" The trap was sprung. The pawn had become the queen. Eleanor didn't shout. She didn't need to. She simply read from the notebook, her voice steady against the backdrop of Beatrice's frantic denials. "August 12th, Eleanor read, sliding a photocopy of a receipt across the table to Arthur. "Renovation budget for the West Wing, 150,000. Actual expenditure, 40,000. The rest was transferred to a shell company called BH Consulting. Beatrice Harrington Consulting." Arthur Harrington picked up the paper. His hand trembled, not from age but from rage. He looked at the dates. He looked at the signatures. It wasn't just incompetence. It was systematic embezzlement. "Grandfather, she's lying!" Beatrice screamed, her composure shattering completely. "She's a maid. She's jealous. You can't believe her over your own blood." Arthur looked up slowly. "The bank account numbers match, Beatrice. You didn't just steal from the company. You stole from the family." Mr. Sato leaned forward. "I will sign the deal, Mr. Harrington, but on one condition. The management changes today. I do not do business with thieves." Arthur turned to his granddaughter. His eyes were cold. "Give me your badge, Beatrice. You are removed from the board effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "You can't do this!" Beatrice shrieked as two guards stepped forward. "I am a Harrington." "You are a disgrace," Arthur said. As Beatrice was dragged from the room, kicking and screaming, she locked eyes with Eleanor. Eleanor didn't smile. She just watched, feeling the weight of 3 years of abuse lift off her shoulders. Mr. Sato turned to Eleanor. "And now, for the new liaison to the board." 6 months later, the Harrington Royal was transformed. The staff were paid fairly, the linens were actually clean, and the morale was sky high. Eleanor Vance didn't move to Tokyo. She stayed as the director of guest relations, the bridge between the Western staff and the Eastern investors. She walked through the lobby, wearing a suit that she had bought with her own paycheck. She passed the chess table in the lounge. It was empty, waiting for the next game. She had won. What a satisfying ending. Eleanor went from an invisible waitress to the most powerful person in the room, proving that true class isn't about money. It's about character and intelligence. Beatrice learned the hard way that you should never underestimate the people you step on. They might just be the ones holding the keys to your future. If you enjoyed this story of karmic justice and hidden talent, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were in Eleanor's shoes? Would you have helped the billionaire or walked away? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.